Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back to some more bite-sized business advice. We got a rock star episode lined up today, a conversation I'm super excited to have, and a topic we have not covered on the podcast. It's simply how to build trust in 5 minutes. I think this is exciting because it applies whether you're the business owner, talking to your employees, talking to customers, talking to your family. It applies in so many different places, running your business, and also overlaps in your personal life, which I love because business is not just about business. It's about your whole life. So let's dive in here. I got a rock star guest. Like I said, Jake Stahl. Welcome to the show, Jake.
Brandon, thanks for having me. This is truly an honor. Love it.
Yeah. So we got to talking before the recording here, and I don't know if I trust you. So we have about 15 minutes on this episode. Let's see if we can turn the tables here. But no, seriously, you seem awesome. I'm excited to break this down. Talk to me about this aspect of building trust. I mentioned a number of different areas, but how does this show up in the business world?
So, Brandon, the way it shows up in the business world is we're all really conditioned, whether we know it or not. And our conditioning often leads us to put up defensive barriers right away. And unknowingly, as people who are communicating, selling, whether it's to a venture capitalist or to a client or maybe even a significant other, we do some pretty basic triggers that put up barriers with other people. And as I'm sure we're going to discuss, if we can break down that conditioning, if we can get by people triggering those thoughts in other heads, it makes a significant difference. And I'm a firm believer that you can establish trust in no time if you just follow some simple guidelines.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been in a situation where we needed to establish trust. Maybe we didn't, or it wasn't completely rock solid. And the relationship, the sales conversation, the date night with your spouse, like it got derailed. So I think everybody listening can relate to this on some level. But let's talk about how to do this, because building trust in 5 minutes, I mean, sometimes we don't have 5 minutes. I don't think
You're
we
right.
talked for 5 minutes before we got on this episode. And you may have mentioned building a spaceship to leave Earth and leave everybody behind. So I don't know, Jake.
You said that would be between us.
Yeah. So how do we go about building trust in under 5 minutes?
The first thing is we need to rethink our greeting when we talk to people. The greeting we're all familiar with is, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you today? And whether we realize that or not, that's quite the trigger for a lot of people. It sets the stage. And most of the time, it's not as productive because we know we don't really care what the answer is. We've adopted it as our hello statement. And really, we can start by just changing that. So, Brandon, if you think about a business owner talking to another person, think about how the spotlight would change if when you got on the phone with him, I said, Brandon, I am so glad we got to talk. Listen to your podcast. I was just excited to hear your views. And we can morph that into whatever we want it to be. But automatically, who does that put the spotlight on? It puts it on you.
On the other person.
And what's everybody's favorite topic?
Themselves.
And what's amazing is people say, oh, that's so transparent. People would notice. Brandon, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And I can tell you, people don't notice. As a matter of fact, more often than not, people will say, you were excited to talk to me? Why? Many people don't understand the value they bring to a conversation. So if I can highlight that value early, it automatically puts the conversation on solid footing.
This is interesting. I'm pretty sure that's exactly how I started our conversation. I said, Jake, how are you? And let's just be an open book here. Let's walk through it. So did I kill the trust of this conversation before it even started?
No, but if we had a limited amount of time to talk and you didn't have more time for you to establish that trust, it may have limited it, because I'm always on the lookout for that. I passed a guy the other day when my wife and I were shopping and our eyes met. And I looked at him and I nodded my head. I said, hey. And he goes, fine, thanks. How are you?
It's like robotic.
Exactly. So if we think about that in a conversation, it's real estate we could have used better to build that foundation of trust.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm even thinking like, because I love to bring this into my own personal life. I often find that that's the practice ground for business and how I carry myself in my day-to-day role. If I go to the grocery store and I go to the checkout lane, what do I say to the cashier? Give me an example of that.
You can do any number of things. So let's say the cashier's looking a little haggard. And I did this the other day when we went out to a restaurant. The cashier was like, she was having none of it. So the first thing I did was I said, ooh, looks like you're having a rough day. And what's amazing is that's kind of like, how are you? But it's acknowledging them personally and it's asking for their input without being a question. So automatically this girl just brightened up and she's like, you would not believe this day. And I said, ooh, rough, huh? Here's what happened. And before I knew it, within minutes, she was laughing. She was asking what we wanted and everything was great, but it was a distinct departure from how it started. So again, it's showing interest. You like their hair? Compliment their hair. You like how fast they checked you out? Say, man, you're the best cashier I've seen all day. I'm glad I got in your line. Pick out something other than how are you to spotlight the other person.
I like that. I always like how fast people check me out. Not that kind of show. Okay, we're going to move on. But next step then, after we get away from the how are you, we start an authentic conversation. I think that's really the root of this, is we want to get in real conversation with the other person. What's the next step after that?
So we often talk about whether flattery is a good thing or not, right? Because some people, that kind of ups their radar to flattery. But a great way, once you're getting into the conversation, is seek the other person's advice. And this is easier than it sounds. So even if I'm talking to my son, we'll get into a conversation. I'll go, you know what? I was thinking about this the other day and I would love your input. They have actually done psychological studies and found that asking for advice triggers more neurotransmitters than flattery. So it's an amazing piece of a conversation to get somebody involved. And Brandon, pick anybody in your day and off the top of your head, think of one thing you could ask for advice on. With my wife, we've been together for a long time and she'll come into a room and we'll start talking and I'll say, man, how do you stay so calm during the day? You know, and it's just automatically, wow, you think that? Hey, and again, it's another step towards trust. Because Brandon, the bottom line is this: since we love ourselves as a topic, and there's nothing wrong with that, people are going to gravitate to and trust people who are like themselves. So the more I can mirror them, the more I can ask for their advice, the more I can trigger those neurotransmitters, the quicker trust is going to form. I have conversations with people where I'll talk 3% of the time, according to my AI note taker, and they'll say, man, I feel like I can tell you anything. We've known each other for 20 minutes, but it's because I didn't dominate the conversation.
Yeah, the little AI note taker thing, I make it a game with myself. If I ever get close, my number's between like 30, 40%. If I ever get close to that, I'm like, oh, shut up, ask more questions. That's funny though that you do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good measuring stick for how well you've gotten the other person involved in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it makes so much sense. It does beg the question though, and we had briefly chatted about this, but we have to dispel this myth because we know it will come up.
Yeah.
Does this cross the line or approach the line of manipulation? And the things that come to mind around that is, especially if you go up to somebody and you compliment them, which is not what you said to do. You said ask them a question, get them involved in the conversation. But sometimes that can come off as manipulative. And I've been in sales conversations where they compliment, meaningless things like my background of my studio here, which is awesome. That's fantastic. When you compliment the appearance of somebody, that's where I start to be like, I'm not that attractive. Like, let's be real. You don't have to compliment how my beard looks. But where does that line kind of come in?
You do have a nice beard, though. I can't grow my facial hair out at all. So. Yeah, and it's an excellent question. And I've been doing neuro-linguistic programming for a while, and it's probably one of the most common questions I get. And my response is simply this. If you're honest and you are genuinely asking a question you want an answer to, or you're genuinely telling them you're happy to talk to them, or you're asking for advice, I don't see that as manipulative at all, if I'm being sincere about it. I think where it goes beyond that is when you're doing it to elicit a certain response. So if I'm guiding you down the trail, and I hate this, I do sales training a lot, and I hate when people say, I'm going to help you get to yes. No, don't do that. Have a perfect conversation where yes may be the byproduct of the conversation that you have. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But I think manipulation is a valid question. But I would say if you do it with sincerity and you genuinely want to know about a person, or you genuinely want to ask their advice, I don't see that as manipulation at all. And if I want to truly get to know you, Brandon, and I want to build trust, and I use that to build trust, I don't have an ulterior motive. So I don't have a problem with building trust with ways that are tried and true, and I can learn more about you.
No, I think that's beautiful. And I have to highlight something you said there, because I think it's absolutely brilliant and it gets overlooked so often, especially in business. You said, make the yes the byproduct of the perfect conversation. When we talk to our clients and we help streamline their operations, and we're setting targets for the quarter, we always make the goals, their whatever you want to call that, their outcomes, the byproduct of the execution that the company does. And I think that gets missed, that fine line of saying, we're shooting for this. No, you shouldn't shoot for that, because you can actually, that's where the manipulation could come in, if you're chasing the yes,
right,
and you're seeking that one result, you've left the authentic, real conversation off the table. And I absolutely love that you said it that way. So thank you for that. I can tell now that you never manipulate.
And hopefully by now I built your trust.
We have trust. So we did it in, we've been doing this for about 12 minutes now. You had my trust before that. I'll say that. But I am curious though, because we've gotten this far in the conversation, right? Are there more steps? Are there more things we need to be aware of? Like, where would you take the conversation from here?
Well, here's something that's really cool. We talk about persuasion, and that doesn't always have to have a negative connotation. But what about persuasion? What can I do before the conversation to help build that trust? And here's a great piece for anybody who uses Zoom, has an avatar, or has LinkedIn to use. There are 3 parts of a photograph of your headshot that can be used to establish trust without you even talking to someone. Care to guess what those are?
I don't want to make a fool of myself, so no, I'm not going to guess.
Okay.
But I am going to analyze my profile picture as you're talking.
So the first one, and the one everybody in your audience is going to get, is a smile. A genuine smile, the kind that shows a little bit of crow's feet up in the upper corner, not the fake smile. So that's part 1. Part 2 is leaning just slightly forward. So it gives you that look of interest right away. And even though it's not you, it shows from your picture that you're someone who wants to listen and is genuinely interested. The third one is the wild one to me. The third one is a slight, just really slight tilt to your head. Not a straight head, but just a slight tilt. And the people who've done these studies believe, and I don't know how true this is, but they believe that by showing your jugular to a small amount, you're showing that you trust the other person not to attack or be aggressive. And they've done these studies, and FBI profilers have even suggested this, that those are 3 great ways to establish trust before you even talk to someone.
That's really interesting. What percentage of the body? I assume it's obviously not just the head, because you can't really see if you're leaning in, but how far down are we going in that picture?
Yeah, chest height is usually good to be able to establish that.
That's really interesting. I'm curious, have you tested this in your own?
I haven't tested it personally, but my personal opinion is I always look to the experts. And if a couple of FBI profilers and psychologists say this is so, you got me, I'll take it.
We're going to trust them with that. And it's super important too, because I mean, you can probably think of you, Jake, and you, the listener, of situations where you've seen somebody's picture, and we all heard the saying, don't judge a book by its cover. but you look and you have this gut tuition, right? That something's just off. And I never put the pieces together like that, but it could be very simple as saying like, their jugular's not showing. They might think I'm going to attack them, however stupid it may be. But these little things all add up. And to get into a conversation with someone who's already at ease, I think it just makes the rest of the conversation and your job so much easier.
It does. And that's an area to me, Brandon, that we don't think about often enough is what can we do prior to the conversation to start building that trust ahead of time? And your picture, your LinkedIn profile, your avatar, whatever you want to call it, is a great way to start the trust process.
Yeah, that's super cool. All right, so we do have to start wrapping up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put your website on the screen here. You've been gracious enough to offer the listener a free 1-hour consultation, which I think is amazing. And you said what? Just mention the show.
Yeah, just mention the show when you book it with me. You can book it right on that website, and just put in the notes you saw me on the show, and I'll be glad to give you an hour free. Sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. So just mention you came from Harmonious at lunch. And I appreciate you taking your time. Time is the most valuable thing we have, and Jake's just giving it freely to us because he wants to make us all better, which is awesome. Thank you, Jake. So one more, just quickly, these tips have been phenomenal, and it's more importantly stuff we can implement like immediately after you stop listening to this episode, which I love, and they're all free, which is also cool. But is there anything else we need to know in terms of building trust in 5 minutes? I think we have a really good foundation, but is there anything else you would say must be present for this?
Active listening. Many, many times you will see a person and they're speaking to you, and you know that they're listening strictly for your pause and to be able to say something else. So active listening is definitely the key to this whole process. And the way to check if you're active listening is paraphrase little bits and pieces back to the person. Jake, I'm feeling lousy today. Oh, it sounds like you haven't been having a good day. Jake, I feel great today. Wow, it sounds like you're in a good mood. So parrot things back. Again, I've done this for 30 years. Nobody ever catches it. And yet it encourages conversation and trust because they know you're listening. You're forcing yourself to listen, and it's creating good back and forth.
It's a fantastic tip. And you really can tell. And it's one of those things that I think no matter how much you've done before that, that's got to be one of those things that just either erodes or eliminates trust in a conversation. If you're just you're talking at each other.
Yes.
It's destroys trust, destroys relationships. So Jake, those were fantastic tips. Wherever you're watching or listening, I realize we didn't say what the website is. It's jakestahlconsulting.com. If you're listening, it's also in the show notes down below. You can go grab your 1 hour free. But Jake, you can see me here. You can also see the giant upside down lit up obnoxious question mark behind me. We believe at What If powerful questions get powerful answers. In terms of growing your business, in terms of helping somebody along this path of what we talked about today, helping them up-level their sales game or just their relationship game in general. What question would you want somebody to ask walking away from this episode that they could think about for the rest of the day, the rest of the week, or whatever, or going into their next conversation with somebody? What can they be asking themselves so that they can help build trust with other people in under 5 minutes?
I think the biggest thing we can do, Brandon, is look back on a conversation we had that went astray and go, what part of that conversation led me down this path? And then actively try to change that in future conversations. I get asked all the time, wow, you teach us for a living. You must be awesome at communicating. Not really. I make mistakes every day. At the end of the day, I forgive myself and I try to get better the next day. It's a game that you constantly try and improve on, but you never really perfect. And that's the thrill of it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. Jake, I can't thank you enough for being here. This was a phenomenal conversation.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.
For you, the listener, watcher, wherever you are, make sure you subscribe. We want to continue to bring this ridiculous show, Harmonious at Lunch, to you every single day of the week so that hopefully you get that little bite-sized nugget that you can take with you for the rest of the day and continue to move your business and your personal life forward. That's what it's all about. Let's build a complete human and a complete business all at the same time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode.